You don't fear love, you fear being seen. Not the surface level kind of seen, the way someone notices your smile or compliments your style. You fear the deeper kind. The kind of seeing that strips away every defense you've ever built. The kind that peers behind your silence, past your charm, into the corners of you that even you try not to visit. That's what love threatens to do. It doesn't just open you up to affection, it opens you up to exposure. And that's terrifying, because you've spent years mastering the art of self-protection, hiding your fear behind detachment, masking your hurt with cynicism, and keeping one foot out the door, just in case. You tell yourself you're not ready or just being smart, but deep down, something else is true. You're afraid that if someone really knew you, they'd leave. Love isn't scary because it's rare. It's scary because it's real. Because once someone sees you, flaws, fears, shame, all of it, you lose control of the narrative. You can't curate your image anymore. You can't disappear behind a perfect mask. And if they walk away, it won't be rejection of the mask. It will be rejection of you. That's the real fear, not loneliness, but being truly known and still abandoned. So maybe the fear of love isn't fear of closeness. It's fear of being unmasked and then left in the ruins of your own exposure. That's not just pain, it's annihilation. The moment you want, you lose. That's the quiet belief buried inside many of us, that to desire someone, to truly need them, is to hand them the power to break us. Wanting feels like weakness because it creates dependence, and dependence feels like danger. In childhood you learned this without knowing it. Maybe love was inconsistent, maybe care came with conditions, maybe your emotional needs were met with silence or shame or punishment, and so your nervous system rewired itself with a simple rule: need nothing, trust no one, stay in control. Now every time you feel attachment forming, a part of you resists. You feel exposed, unsettled, like you've stepped too close to the edge of something you won't survive. And even if the other person hasn't hurt you, they could. That potential is enough to make your instincts scream, pull back. The more you care, the more you stand to lose. So you flirt with connection but never fall into it. You chase people who won't stay, because deep down, you don't believe anyone safe could be worth wanting. And so, desire becomes a paradox. You long to connect, yet fear what connection demands. Surrender, trust, openness. To need is to risk is to bleed. So you keep yourself at a distance, mistaking detachment for strength. But deep down, it isn't strength at all, it's fear, dressed in armor. Before you ever fell in love, you learned how to survive love, and that survival often started in childhood. Maybe you had a parent who was physically present but emotionally cold, or one who gave you love, but only when you earned it. Maybe you were punished for needing too much, or ignored until you stopped asking at all. That was your first lesson. Love isn't safe. And it left a wound so deep you forgot it was even there. But it is there. It whispers in your adult relationships, shaping who you choose, how you behave, and what you expect. You pull away when things get close. You test people to see if they'll leave. You attach to those who are unavailable because that feels familiar. The fear of abandonment isn't just a fear of being left. It's the terror of reliving that first emotional death. The moment you learned that your feelings were too much, your needs too big, your presence too inconvenient. So now you protect yourself. You say you don't care. You say you're independent. But beneath all of that is a child still waiting at the door, wondering why no one came back. Until that wound is faced, it will run your life from the shadows. Because the past doesn't stay buried, it becomes the blueprint, and every relationship problem you think you're having now, may just be a ghost from back then, still waiting to be healed. There's a reason intimacy feels so uncomfortable. It's not just closeness, it's exposure. When you let someone get close, they stop seeing your curated version. They start to see you, the unfiltered, imperfect, sometimes fragile, sometimes defensive version you've spent years trying to manage or hide. Love doesn't just reflect affection, it reflects your shadow, your insecurity, your fear of rejection, your buried shame, that thing you still haven't forgiven yourself for, that part of you you wish didn't exist. Being truly known by someone else means you can no longer hide from yourself, and that can feel terrifying, so you pull away, you start a fight, you emotionally shut down, not because you don't care, but because caring makes you visible, and visibility makes you vulnerable. We all want to be loved, but few of us are prepared to be seen in full, because when someone sees all of you and chooses to stay, it's healing. But when someone sees all of you and leaves, it confirms every fear you've tried to bury. So you keep your distance, not because you don't want love, but because you fear what it might reveal. Deep down, you want connection, you want to be seen, supported, even loved, but part of you also wants control. Control over how you're perceived, control over how much you feel, control over how close someone gets so you never feel powerless again. This is the war inside so many intelligent, self-protective people, the desire to love and the refusal to surrender. Because love requires surrender, it requires trust. It asks you to let someone in, not just into your body or your bed, but into the parts of you that you've guarded with barbed wire. That feels dangerous. Emotional closeness threatens the illusion of autonomy. Suddenly your feelings depend on someone else's behavior. Their words affect your mood. Their silence makes your mind spiral. Their pain becomes your burden. And that shift, losing emotional independence, can trigger a deep unconscious panic. So what do? You push back, you distance, you withhold. You micromanage affection, monitor vulnerability, and subtly test the balance of power, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Because if someone else holds your heart, they can drop it, so better to hold on to it yourself, even if it means you never truly share it. The war between love and control is quiet, but brutal. And until you name it, it will keep ruining the very thing you crave most. You tell yourself you're just independent, that you like your space, that you don't need anyone. And maybe part of that is true, but what if it's also a story you've crafted to survive? Because distance doesn't always mean strength. Sometimes it's just disguise, a shield to keep love from getting too close. Emotional closeness feels risky. It asks you to loosen your grip, soften your edges, and open doors you've kept locked for years. That's not independence, that's exposure. So instead you keep people at arm's length. You prefer situationships over commitment. You fall for unavailable partners. You say it's not the right time or they were too much, when what you really mean is they got too close. The space you create starts as self-preservation, but slowly becomes self-imprisonment. You feel safer when you're untouchable, but also lonelier, emptier, emotionally starving. Because distance may protect your heart, but it also keeps it from being touched. Eventually you have to ask, is this really independence or just fear wearing a confident mask? Your body wants one thing, your mind demands another, and in between them you stand, torn. Lust is primal, it bypasses logic, crashes through caution and awakens something ancient inside you. It's intoxicating, addictive, it makes you feel alive. But for the intelligent or emotionally guarded mind, that sensation isn't just thrilling, it's threatening. Because lust doesn't ask for permission, It doesn't wait for analysis. It hijacks control. And if control is your currency, if your self-worth is built on being composed, calculated, and unshakable, then raw desire feels like danger. You start to question yourself. Why do I want this? What if they don't want me back? What if I lose myself? And so you intellectualize your feelings. You rationalize attraction away. You suppress desire under the illusion of discipline. But underneath all that logic is fear, not of sex, not of connection, but of losing control, of letting someone matter too much, of doing something irrational, of being vulnerable in a moment you didn't plan for. The mind tries to cage what the body wants to set free, and in that internal war between instinct and intellect, desire often becomes a battlefield rather than a bridge. The question isn't whether you feel, it's whether you're willing to feel without controlling. That's the real risk, and the real liberation. There's a certain kind of panic that doesn't come at the beginning of love, but at the idea of it lasting. Not because you don't care, but because forever feels like a prison sentence dressed as a promise. Commitment asks you to choose, not just once but again and again. And for the emotionally guarded or fiercely independent mind, that feels less like devotion and more like confinement. You start to ask yourself, who will I become if I stay? What if I outgrow this? What if I disappear into someone else's needs, habits, rhythms? Long-term intimacy threatens your most prized possession, freedom. The ability to move, to change, to reinvent yourself without permission. But beneath that is something even deeper, identity panic. The fear that, in merging with another, you might forget who you are on your own. So you pull back, you sabotage, you chase novelty or solitude, not because you don't want love, but because you're afraid of being claimed by it. Commitment isn't just about staying, it's about surrendering control over what comes next. And to the mind that fears being trapped, even the idea of forever feels like a threat. Unconditional love sounds beautiful, pure, selfless, healing. But if you've been hurt enough times, it starts to sound like a lie. Nothing comes without cost, your mind tells you. Everything is a transaction. And so you learn to measure every gesture. You look for the hidden price. You expect the strings. A compliment, what do they want? Affection? What's the catch? Vulnerability, what are they trying to get from you? You become emotionally vigilant, scanning for motives, calculating outcomes, never fully relaxing into connection. Not because you're manipulative, but because somewhere along the line, you were taught that love always comes with conditions. Maybe it was a parent who only praised you when you performed. Maybe it was a partner who used closeness as currency. Or maybe it was just years of silent disappointment that hardened you. Now, love feels like a negotiation. You give to get. You withhold to protect. You build invisible ledgers in your mind. What have I done for them? What have they done for me? And when someone offers you love with no apparent cost, you don't trust it. You can't. Because to believe in unconditional love would mean believing you're worthy of it. And if that belief was never built, you'll keep approaching love like a deal instead of a gift you're allowed to receive. You crave connection, real soul-level closeness, the kind that makes you feel seen, safe, understood. But when it starts to happen, something strange kicks in. You retreat, pick a fight, go silent, pull away, and afterward, you ask yourself, why do I keep doing this? The truth is brutal. Being known hurts. Not in the obvious way, but in the deep, slow, uncomfortable way that threatens every defense you've built to survive. Because once someone sees you fully, they also have the power to leave you fully. Not the fake version, not the curated one. You. So you self-sabotage, not because you don't want love, but because you've learned that closeness always comes with cost, exposure, dependence, and eventual disappointment. Better to ruin it first, you think. Better to leave before you're left. Better to stay untouched than to be touched and then abandoned. This is how intelligent, emotionally aware people can still destroy the very relationships they long for. They know the pattern. They hate the pattern. But they trust fear more than they trust hope, because at least fear is familiar. At least fear has a script. To be known is to risk the one thing the guarded self cannot endure, being truly loved and then lost. So you protect yourself the only way you know how, by breaking what could save you. There's a part of you that knows better. You recognize the red flags. You feel the tension. You see the distance, the coldness, the chaos, and yet you're still drawn in. Again and again and again. Why? Because your heart isn't always looking for love. Sometimes it's looking for familiar pain. This is the repetition compulsion, the unconscious urge to recreate the emotional wounds of your past, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you're trying to master it. If you grew up with love that felt distant, conditional, or unsafe, then to your nervous system, that is what love is. So when you meet someone who withholds affection, who keeps you chasing, who feels just out of reach, something inside you lights up. It's not attraction, it's recognition. You're not falling in love, you're falling into a pattern. Each toxic partner becomes another chance to rewrite the story. Maybe this time they'll choose me, stay with me, love me right, but they don't. And the wound deepens. You don't choose pain on purpose, but your heart remembers what your mind has tried to forget. And until you break that loop, you'll keep calling trauma chemistry. Love is supposed to be connection, not consumption, but for many of us it feels like a threat to our freedom, our identity, even our sanity. We want to be close but not swallowed. We want to be seen but not dismantled. We want to belong but not disappear. So the question becomes, can you love without losing yourself? Can you stand in intimacy and still hold your shape? Can you let someone in without collapsing under the weight of old fears and unhealed wounds? Can you stop mistaking emotional safety for boredom? Stop calling chaos passion? Stop confusing attachment with abandonment waiting to happen? Can you stop building your identity around avoiding pain and start allowing space for something deeper? The truth is, most people don't fear love. They fear what love might require of them: softness, surrender, presence, letting go of control. You don't need to become someone else to be loved, and you don't need to lose your solitude to find connection. But you do have to ask yourself honestly, are you protecting yourself from harm or from healing? Because in the end, love won't save you, but it might show you where you still need saving. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, remember, you're not alone in your fears. Share this with someone who might need it. And until next time, keep searching for the courage to love without losing yourself.